But the most terrifying moment of my life wasn't when I saw my daughter's face through that basement window, pale and desperate. It wasn't even the sound of my wife Grace's muffled screams coming from below the floorboards. No, the moment that changed everything was when a man I'd only seen twice before grabbed my arm in the driveway and said 5 words that shattered my entire understanding of my family. Your daughter is the monster. I'm 62 years old. I've been married to Grace for 38 years. We raised one daughter, Emma, in a beautiful home in the Seattle suburbs with everything a child could want. I was a high school English teacher for 40 years, and I thought I understood people, understood character, understood the difference between right and wrong. I was so incredibly, devastatingly wrong. Let me back up. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Grace told me she was driving down to check on Emma and her husband Michael. Our daughter had been calling more frequently, her voice tight with stress, complaining about money troubles, about Michael's long hours at his construction job, about how hard everything was. Grace, always the worrier, wanted to bring them groceries and maybe slip Emma some cash to help with bills. I told her to go ahead. I had papers to grade, a retirement project to work on. I'd see them at Thanksgiving dinner. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Grace's side of the bed was cold and empty, and something gnawed at me. Maybe it was guilt. You see, I'd never really approved of Michael. When Emma brought him home 6 years ago, I saw a guy in dusty work boots with calloused hands and a beat-up truck. Grace came from money, old Seattle tech money, and Emma had grown up with private schools and summer camps. Michael? He grew up in a trailer park in Tacoma, worked construction since he was 16, barely finished community college. I never said it outright, but Emma knew. She knew I thought she was settling, marrying beneath her station. The next morning, I made a decision. I'd surprise them. Drive down, take everyone out to a nice dinner, maybe smooth things over. Grace had been distant lately, secretive even. Whispering phone calls she'd end when I walked in the room. Maybe this trip could fix whatever strange tension had crept into our marriage. I pulled up to Emma and Michael's modest rental house, around 2 in the afternoon. It was a small craftsman in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place I'd driven past 100 times without really seeing. Michael's truck was in the driveway, which surprised me. He should have been at work. Grace's car was there too, parked at an odd angle like she'd been in a hurry. I was halfway up the cracked concrete walkway when I heard the van door slam. A stocky man in his 50s, wearing coveralls with Rodriguez plumbing stitched on the pocket, came jogging across the lawn from the house next door. His face was flushed, urgent. "Wait," he called out. "Wait! You can't just go in there." I stopped, my hand already reaching for the doorbell. "Excuse me? I'm here to see my daughter." "I know who you are." He was breathing hard, like he'd run to catch me. "I'm Carlos Rodriguez. I've done work at this house 3 times in the past 2 months. Broken pipes, water heater issues, a smashed bathroom sink." He looked at the house, then back at me, his expression conflicted. "Sir, I don't know you, but I can't watch this anymore without saying something." "Watch what?" Irritation crept into my voice. "Is there a problem with the house?" "Not with the house." He lowered his voice. "With your daughter. Sir, Emma is not who you think she is." I felt my jaw tighten. I don't appreciate strangers making accusations about my family. "I'm not accusing, I'm warning." Carlos glanced at the house again, checking the windows. "Every time I've come here, it's the same story. Your daughter calls, hysterical, says her husband damaged something in a rage. Broken sink, shattered mirror, kicked-in closet door. She cries. She shows me the damage. She says Michael loses control when he drinks." My chest tightened. Michael had always been quiet around me, almost submissive. But wasn't that how abusers operated? Charming in public, violent in private. "Are you saying my son-in-law is dangerous?" "No," Carlos's voice was firm. "I'm saying he's not the one breaking things. Last month, I was here fixing a bathroom pipe. Michael was at work, supposedly. But I heard him. He was in the bedroom, and I heard Emma screaming at him, throwing things. I heard glass breaking, heard her yelling about money, about his pathetic paycheck, about how he ruined her life. Then it got quiet. Too quiet. When I finished the job, Michael came out with a fresh bruise under his eye. Emma smiled, handed me a check, and said her husband had another one of his episodes. I felt the world tilt slightly. That doesn't prove anything. Maybe she was defending herself. Sir, last week I saw something else. Carlos pulled out his phone, his hands shaking slightly. I was working on the house next door, running a camera through their sewer line in the backyard. The fence has gaps. I could see into Emma's basement window. I saw her down there, going through papers, forging something. I watched her practice signing a name over and over. Not her signature. I'm pretty sure it was Michael's. You're making serious allegations. I'm not making anything. I'm telling you what I've seen because I have a daughter too, and if she was in danger, I'd want someone to tell me. He met my eyes. But your daughter isn't in danger. Michael is. And maybe your wife too. I saw Grace's car pull up an hour ago, and I heard shouting. Loud shouting. Then, nothing. Sir, something is very wrong in that house. Before I could respond, before I could process what he was telling me, we both heard it. A scream. Muffled, desperate, coming from inside the house. It was Grace's voice. I ran. I didn't think. I hit that front door with my shoulder, but it was locked, solid. Carlos was right behind me, already pulling tools from his belt. Back door, he said. We ran around the side of the house. The back door was unlocked. I crashed through into the kitchen, and the house was chaos. Broken dishes on the floor. A chair overturned, and I could hear Grace now, clearly, screaming my name from somewhere below. The basement, Carlos said. I found the basement door in the hallway. It was locked from the outside. A simple bolt lock, the kind you'd use to keep kids out of a storage area. My hands shook as I slid it open. The stairs descended into darkness. Grace! I shouted. David! Oh God, David, get us out! Her voice was raw with terror. I flew down those stairs. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor. Exposed beams. Grace was huddled in the corner, her hands zip-tied in front of her. Michael was next to her, blood running from a gash on his forehead. His hands also bound. They looked at me with identical expressions of relief and fear. Emma, Grace gasped. David, Emma did this. She locked us down here. She's been gone for 20 minutes. I think she went to the bank. I couldn't speak. My mind couldn't reconcile the image with reality. Emma did what? Michael's voice was quiet, defeated. She found out about the money, about what Grace has been doing. What money? I knelt down, working at Grace's zip ties. They were tight, professional grade. Carlos came down with wire cutters from his truck. Grace was crying now. David, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. For the past year, I've been sending money to Michael's mother. She has cancer, stage 4, and the treatments aren't covered by insurance. Michael was drowning in medical debt, working 80-hour weeks trying to pay it off. Emma wouldn't help. She said it wasn't her problem, that Michael's family should figure it out themselves. So I've been using my inheritance money, the fund from my mother. I've sent almost $40,000 to cover treatments and hospital bills. The world stopped making sense. You've been hiding this from me for a year? I knew you wouldn't understand. You already looked down on Michael for being poor. I thought if you knew his mother was sick, that his family needed help, you'd think less of him. Think he married Emma for money. Grace's voice broke. But he didn't know either. I sent the money directly to the medical center. He only found out last week when his mother's oncologist called to thank him for paying the bill. That's when Emma found out too. Michael spoke up, his voice hoarse. Emma went through our bank statements, saw large payments I didn't recognize. She thought I was hiding money from her. When I told her it was your wife helping my mom, she lost it. She's been getting worse over the past year, more paranoid, more angry. I found out she's been gambling, online casinos. She's run up $70,000 in debt. $70,000? I felt sick. She forged my signature on loan applications, credit cards, cash advances. I didn't know until collectors started calling my work. When I confronted her 2 weeks ago, she said it was my fault. That if I made more money, if I was a real man instead of a worthless construction worker, she wouldn't need to gamble to feel alive. Carlos cut through Grace's zip ties, then Michael's. My wife rubbed her wrists, red and raw. There's more, Michael said quietly. All those times she called you, Grace, crying about me breaking things? She did it herself. Smashed the bathroom sink with a hammer, kicked in the closet door with her own foot, then called a plumber and played the victim. She wanted you to feel sorry for her, give her money. Every time you sent her a check to help with repairs, she'd pocket it and gamble it away. The repairs never got done. We've been living in a house falling apart, and I couldn't say anything because I thought if I told you the truth, you'd side with her. I looked at this man, really looked at him. His face was bruised, his lips split. How many times had I seen him at family dinners, quiet and polite, and assumed it was because he had nothing to contribute? How many times had Emma made some cutting remark about his job, his truck, his lack of ambition, and I'd said nothing, maybe even agreed silently? Why didn't you leave? I asked. Why stay with someone who treats you like this? Michael's laugh was bitter. Because I loved her. Because I thought if I was just patient enough, worked hard enough, she'd remember why she married me. And because she threatened me. Said if I ever tried to leave, she'd tell everyone I abused her. Show them photos of her bruises she gave herself. Say I forced her into debt. Who would believe a blue-collar guy with no money over the daughter of a wealthy family? The pieces were clicking into place with sickening clarity. The scratches, I said. Last Thanksgiving, Emma had scratches on her arms. She said you'd grabbed her during an argument. I never touched her. She did those herself with a fork. I watched her do it in the bathroom. Then she came out crying and called you. Michael's voice was empty now, all emotion drained. Your daughter is sick, Mr. Brennan. I don't know if she was always this way or if something broke in her, but she's dangerous, and she's getting desperate. Grace gripped my arm. David, when I came over today, Emma seemed off. She kept asking about my mother's inheritance, about how much was left, about whether I'd given Michael's family more money. When I admitted I had, she snapped. She said I chose him over my own daughter, that I betrayed her. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen and told Michael to get downstairs. When he refused, she cut her own arm. Grace's voice shook. She cut her own arm and said she'd tell police Michael attacked us both if we didn't do exactly what she said. Where is she now? Carlos asked from the stairs. I told you, Grace said. The bank. She made me write down my account information, my passwords. She said she was going to transfer everything to herself, that it was her inheritance anyway, that I had no right to give her money away. Then she tied us up and left. She said if we called the police, she'd say Michael held us hostage, and she barely escaped. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but Michael stopped me. Wait, she has something else. Something worse. From his pocket, he pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I found this in her car last week. It's a life insurance policy. On me, $1 million policy that she took out 3 months ago, forging my signature again. Mr. Brennan, I think she's planning to kill me and make it look like an accident or suicide. The paper trembled in my hands. The policy was real, stamped and official. Michael's forged signature at the bottom. Emma listed as the sole beneficiary. That's why she's been staging the abuse, Michael continued. Building a record. If I died, she'd have documentation of a violent, unstable husband. Maybe he drank too much one night and crashed his truck. Maybe he couldn't handle the guilt and took his own life. Either way, she'd get $1 million, plus sympathy, plus whatever she steals from your wife's account today. I felt like I was drowning. This couldn't be the little girl I'd raised. The daughter who'd brought me breakfast in bed on Father's Day, who'd cried when she scraped her knee, who'd graduated top of her class. Where had that child gone? Or had I never really known her at all? We need to call the police now, Carlos said. She's had 20 minutes. She could be doing anything. I dialed. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. When the 911 operator answered, I tried to explain, tried to make sense of it, but the words came out jumbled. Daughter, forgery, assault, hostage. The operator said units were on the way, told us to get out of the house, wait outside. We climbed the basement stairs and stumbled toward the front door. I was supporting Grace, who was trembling so hard she could barely walk. Michael moved like a man in shock, and Carlos stayed close like he was afraid to leave us alone. We'd just reached the front porch when Emma's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, a bank envelope in her hand, and froze when she saw all of us standing there. For a moment, just a flash, I saw something cross her face. Not fear, not guilt. Calculation. She was deciding something, weighing options. Then her face crumpled. She dropped the envelope and ran toward us, tears streaming. "Dad! Oh, thank God you're here. It's Michael. He's lost his mind. He tied up. Mom and I barely got away. I was at the bank trying to get money for help and—" "Stop." My voice came out harder than I'd ever spoken to her. "Emma, stop lying." She froze. Then the tears stopped, just like that, like turning off a faucet. Her face went blank, cold. "You're going to believe him over me? Your own daughter?" "I believe what I saw. Your mother and your husband tied up in the basement. I believe the plumber who's witnessed you staged damage to get money. I believe the forged loan documents, the life insurance policy, the gambling debts. Emma, you need help." Something ugly twisted across her features. "Help? You want to talk about help? How about helping your own daughter instead of throwing money at that worthless—" She spat the word. "I won't repeat here. Mom chose his family over me. You always looked at him like he was trash. But the second he plays victim, you fall for it? I'm your daughter. I'm the one who got perfect grades, who made you proud, who did everything right, and you've always made me feel like I wasn't enough." And there it was. The truth I'd been avoiding for 32 years. She was right. I had made her feel that way, not through cruelty, but through expectation. Every A that should have been an A+, every second place that should have been first. Every boyfriend who wasn't quite from the right family, the right background. I'd pushed her to be perfect, and Grace, desperate to make up for my coldness, had indulged her every whim. We'd created this. Not the gambling, not the violence, but the entitlement. The belief that the world owed her everything. "You're right," I said quietly. "I failed you. We both did. But Emma, that doesn't give you the right to hurt people. That doesn't justify forgery, assault, attempted I couldn't say murder. We're going to get you help. Real help. But first, you need to answer for what you've done." I heard sirens in the distance. Emma heard them too. Her eyes darted to her car, to the street, calculating escape routes. Then she looked at Michael, and I saw pure hatred in her eyes. "You ruined everything. If you'd just died like you were supposed to, if you'd just had one more accident on that construction site, if you'd just been weak enough, stop talking." Carlos moved between Emma and Michael. "Lady, you're confessing to attempted murder in front of witnesses." The police arrived. 3 cars, lights flashing. Officers approached cautiously, hands on their weapons. Carlos met them first, explaining quickly. I saw him gesture to the basement, to Emma, to the bank envelope on the ground where she'd dropped it. Emma tried one more time. Started crying again, telling the officers that Michael had terrorized us, that she'd escaped to get help. But Grace, my quiet wife who never contradicted anyone, stepped forward and told them everything. The gambling debts, the forgery, the staged abuse, the basement imprisonment. She showed them her raw wrists. Michael showed them his forged signature on the life insurance policy. An officer picked up the bank envelope. Inside was a withdrawal slip for $38,000. Every cent from Grace's inheritance account. Emma had emptied it. They arrested her, read her rights, handcuffed her. She screamed the whole time, screamed that we'd pay for this, that we were destroying her life, that Michael had poisoned us against her. The neighbors came out to watch. I saw them whispering, phone cameras recording. The shame was crushing. But worse than the shame was the realization. As they put Emma in the back of a patrol car, as her face twisted with rage behind the glass, I understood that I was looking at a stranger. Whatever I'd imagined my daughter to be, whoever I'd wanted her to become, none of it was real. I'd been in love with a projection, an idea, while the real Emma had been drowning in expectations she could never meet, lashing out at anyone she perceived as beneath her, becoming exactly the kind of person I'd unconsciously taught her to be. The police said they'd need statements. They separated us, different officers taking each person aside. I watched Grace talking to a female detective, watched her hands shake as she relived the basement. I watched Michael being examined by paramedics, the gash on his head needing stitches. I watched Carlos giving his statement, showing photos he'd taken of the forged documents he'd glimpsed through the basement window. My officer was young, patient. She asked me to start from the beginning, so I did. I told her about the marriage I'd never approved of, the prejudices I'd held, the signs I'd ignored. I told her about Grace's secret kindness to Michael's mother, about the $40,000 I'd known nothing about. I told her about finding them in the basement, about the life insurance policy, about Emma's confession that she'd wanted Michael to die. We'll be charging her with forgery, false imprisonment, attempted fraud, and making terroristic threats, the officer said. The life insurance policy with intent to harm will likely result in attempted conspiracy to commit murder. She's looking at serious prison time. Prison. My daughter in prison. There's something else you should know, the officer continued. We ran her name. She has a prior incident. 2 years ago, a coworker at her marketing firm filed a harassment complaint. Claimed your daughter was threatening her, spreading rumors, trying to get her fired. It was settled quietly, but there's a record. This isn't the first time she's displayed this kind of behavior. 2 years ago, before the gambling, before the debts. This had been building for longer than I'd known. They took Michael to the hospital for his head injury. Grace and I followed in our car, Carlos driving because neither of us was steady enough. In the emergency room waiting area, we sat in plastic chairs under fluorescent lights, and Grace took my hand. I'm sorry I kept the money secret, she said. I thought I was protecting everyone. I thought if you knew Michael's family needed help, you'd see it as confirmation that he wasn't good enough for Emma. And I thought if Emma knew, she'd feel betrayed. I thought I could fix everything quietly. We can't fix this, I said. We created it. Me with my expectations, you with your enabling. We raised her to think the world revolved around her, that anyone beneath our social class was lesser. And when reality didn't match her expectations, she broke. Grace was crying silently. Can we ever make this right? I didn't know. I didn't have an answer. Michael came out 2 hours later, 7 stitches above his eye, a prescription for pain medication. He looked exhausted, defeated. When he saw us, he hesitated, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. Sit down, I said. Please. He sat. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then I said the words I should have said 6 years ago. I'm sorry. Michael, I'm deeply sorry. I judged you from the moment I met you. I thought you weren't good enough for my daughter, that you were using her for her family's money. I was completely, absolutely wrong. You're more of a man than I'll ever be. You endured abuse, protected my daughter's reputation even when she was destroying you, worked yourself to exhaustion to pay for your mother's medical care. You never asked us for a cent. You never complained. And we repaid you by looking down on you. Michael's eyes were wet. Mr. Brennan, I didn't marry Emma for money. I married her because 6 years ago she was different. Or maybe I was naive. She seemed kind, funny, passionate about her work. The cruelty came later. Or maybe I just started seeing it. By the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep. I loved her. I thought I could save her. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, Grace said softly. I've spent 32 years trying to compensate for her father's coldness by giving her everything she wanted. We thought we were showing love. We were teaching her that she deserved the world without earning it. What happens now? Michael asked. Now we face the consequences, I said. Emma will be prosecuted. You'll need to decide if you want to divorce her, press charges for the forgery and assault. And Grace and I need to figure out how to live with what we've done. Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I don't want revenge. I just want to be free. I want to divorce her, yes. But Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, I don't blame you. Parents can't control who their children become. No, I said. But we can influence it. And we did, in all the worst ways. Over the following weeks, the legal process ground forward. Emma was charged with 11 counts: forgery, identity theft, fraud, false imprisonment, assault, making terroristic threats, attempted insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit harm. Her bail was set high, which I refused to pay. Grace wanted to, out of guilt and maternal instinct, but I held firm. Our daughter needed to face real consequences for the first time in her life. Michael filed for divorce. He moved back in with his mother, who was responding well to treatment, thanks to Grace's money. Grace and I started marriage counseling. Our secret-keeping had nearly destroyed us. We had to learn to communicate, to make decisions together, to be truly partners, instead of two people living parallel lives. The hardest part was accepting what our daughter had become. Grace would lie awake at night, crying, asking where we'd gone wrong. I'd tell her the truth. We'd gone wrong in 1,000 small ways. Every time I'd frowned at a B+ instead of celebrating the effort. Every time she'd bought Emma's way out of consequences. Every time we'd implied that success meant money and status rather than character and kindness. Emma's trial was scheduled for April. Her public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecution had too much evidence. The forged signatures, the recorded threats, the zip ties they'd found in her car trunk along with rope and duct tape. The life insurance policy was damning. Expert witnesses testified about her pattern of abuse, her escalating violence. I attended every day of the trial. Grace couldn't bear it, but I forced myself to watch, to hear witness after witness describe my daughter's cruelty. Coworkers who'd seen her berate Michael when he picked her up from work. The therapist Emma had seen twice and then abandoned, who testified about narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial tendencies. The handwriting expert who confirmed all the forged signatures were Emma's work. And Michael, who took the stand and quietly, methodically described 3 years of psychological and physical abuse. The times she'd thrown dishes at his head. The time she'd pushed him down the stairs and then told the ER doctor he'd fallen drunk. The constant belittling, the threats, the isolation from his friends and family. He showed the jury photos of bruises, cut lips, black eyes. Some jurors cried. Emma showed no remorse. She sat at the defense table, perfectly made up, professionally dressed, and blamed everyone. Her mother for spoiling her, me for being cold, Michael for not being man enough, the prosecutor for being on a witch hunt. She was entitled to her inheritance. She was entitled to take out a life insurance policy on her spouse. She was entitled to discipline her husband when he failed to meet expectations. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in prison, eligible for parole after 8. Emma screamed that it wasn't fair, that we'd all conspired against her, that she was the victim. They led her away, still screaming. Grace and I walked out of that courtroom into bright May sunshine. We stood on the courthouse steps, and I realized I was crying, not for my daughter in prison, for the daughter I'd never really had, for the person she could have been if we'd raised her differently. Michael was there, waiting on a bench. He'd taken the day off work to hear the verdict. When he saw us, he stood up, uncertain. "Thank you," I said, "for testifying, for telling the truth. I know it wasn't easy." "None of this was easy," he said. "But it's done now. We can all start healing." "Michael," Grace said, her voice shaking, "what you said before about not blaming us. You were being kind, but we do bear responsibility, and we want to make amends. The money I sent for your mother's treatment, that was the right thing to do. But I did it secretly, and that was wrong. From now on, if there are medical bills, if there are needs, I want to help openly. Not as charity, but as family." Michael looked stunned. "Mrs. Brennan, you don't have to." "You're divorcing our daughter," I interrupted. "But that doesn't mean you stop being our son-in-law. It doesn't mean we stop caring about you and your mother. We failed, Emma. We won't fail you." And that's what we did. Over the next year, Grace and I became part of Michael's life in the way we should have been all along. We visited his mother, brought meals, sat with her during chemotherapy. We helped Michael repair the house Emma had damaged. actually getting our hands dirty instead of just writing checks. We invited him to family holidays, introduced him to our friends, not as Emma's ex-husband, but as our friend Michael. Grace used the rest of her inheritance to set up a fund for domestic abuse survivors, men who'd been victimized by female partners and had nowhere to turn. She named it Michael's House, and he helped run it, using his experience to counsel other men trapped in abusive relationships. I retired from teaching and started volunteering at a youth mentoring program, trying to help kids understand that their worth wasn't measured in grades or status or wealth, trying to break the cycle I'd perpetuated with my own child. Emma wrote letters from prison, angry letters at first, full of blame and rage, then manipulative letters, trying to guilt us into visiting, into putting money on her commissary account, into supporting her appeals. We didn't respond to those. But when, after 3 years, she sent a letter that simply said, "I'm starting to understand what I did," Grace went to visit her. She came back shaken. "She's different," Grace said. "Not healed, not fixed, but starting to see the prison is a therapy program. She's participating. She's taking responsibility, at least in small ways. I wasn't ready to visit yet. Maybe I never would be. The wound was too deep. But I think about her. I think about the moment in that driveway when she looked at us and I saw the calculation in her eyes. I think about all the small choices that led to that moment, hers and ours. I think about Carlos Rodriguez, the plumber who risked awkwardness and confrontation to warn a stranger that something was wrong. If he hadn't been there, if he hadn't spoken up, what would have happened? Would Emma have succeeded in her plan? Would Michael be dead? And my daughter free and wealthy? And would Grace and I have ever known the truth? Sometimes I drive past that house where it all happened. New tenants live there now. Kids play in the yard. The broken windows have been fixed, the damaged siding repaired. From the outside, it looks like any other house. No one would know the darkness that lived there. That's the thing about monsters. They don't announce themselves. They don't look like monsters. They look like the people we love, the children we raised, the family members we trust. And sometimes, the most terrifying discovery isn't that a monster has been hiding in plain sight. It's realizing that we helped create it, that our love and our failures and our blind spots all combine to nurture something we never intended to raise. I'm 64 now. Grace and I have been married for 40 years. We have no children, not really. We have a daughter in prison who might, someday, find redemption. We have a young man who calls us on Sundays, who brings his mother to our house for dinner, who started dating a kind woman who works at the hospital. We have each other, and we're learning, slowly, how to forgive ourselves. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about those 5 words Carlos said to me in the driveway. "Your daughter is the monster." How desperately I wanted to deny it, to defend her, to explain that he didn't understand. How certain I was that I knew my own child, but I didn't know her. Maybe I never did. Maybe we see only what we want to see in the people we love, until the day we're forced to see the truth. That's the story of how I learned that monsters are real. And sometimes we raise them ourselves. It's the story of how prejudice and pride and expectations can blind us to reality. It's the story of how a man I dismissed as beneath my family became the finest person I know. And it's the story of how sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. From a plumber you've only met twice. From the daughter-in-law you never valued. From the courage to admit you were wrong about everything. I don't have a need anymore. Life doesn't work that way. Emma is still in prison. Michael is still healing. Grace and I are still learning. But we're trying. We're trying to be better, do better, see more clearly. We're trying to break the cycles we didn't even know we were perpetuating. And if there's a lesson in all this, it's this. Listen to the warnings, pay attention to the signs, question your assumptions, and remember that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a beautiful lie. Because in the end, it wasn't the blood on the floor that changed everything. It was the truth, the brutal, devastating, liberating truth